4 runs, no problem. Those cardiac comeback Reds did it again, playing come from behind baseball and winning for a league leading 29th time. We will break it down on today's Locked On Reds. Let's go.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr, and my co-host, Stephen Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction into information for you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us talk some Reds with you. If this is your first time, make sure that you hit us up on Twitter if you're listening, or if you're here on YouTube, drop a thought in our comments section, because talking Reds is what we do, and we want to talk Reds with you. You can get even more Reds insight and get a direct line to me by texting I'm in to 513-597-0944 and join Subtext today. As always, Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, and if you listen every day, let us know that you're an everydayer down in the comments section. We appreciate everybody that makes us an everyday listen. And on today's podcast, this team just loves a comeback win, Steve. We got to look at all the heroes. There were a lot of heroes on Wednesday night's series-winning win in Baltimore. We're going to look at why it should be time for the Reds to move on from Luke Weaver, and should we be worried about Jonathan India's slump that's going on right now? We have some thoughts coming up later in today's show. Before we get to all of that, though, I want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And what you can guarantee, Steve, is that the Cincinnati Reds are never out of a game, period.
They're not. That game was, it was really a lot of fun once you get past the adrenaline heart palpitations of the whole thing. But even Chris Welsh said at the end of the game, he couldn't even begin to figure out how he would wrap. He said he was glad that he wasn't back at the studio, and he hopes that they had taken good notes, because there were just so many heroes in this game. So many guys stepped up in big moments to help make it happen. And, watching the game, it's a weird feeling, Jeff, watching Weaver get blown up in the first inning there and not really being worried about it. I mean, I'm worried about it. But I wasn't worried about it. You know what I mean? Right. Like it didn't make me want to turn the game off early, is what I'm saying. I was going to stick with that game, knowing what this team can do. And they didn't disappoint. By the end of the top of the second inning, they had already recaptured the lead. So it's just that brand of baseball that's so much fun to watch. There were so many players that did some fun things. And I know there's some guys out there that are going to lose their minds as we're talking about bunting, but twice today, guys laid down bunts when you didn't see it coming. Nick Senzel pops one past the pitcher and drops it in no man's land for a bunt single when the Reds really needed to get a guy on base. So it's exciting to watch guys doing things that they haven't been doing or they don't normally do, and having things, for lack of a better way to say this, Jeff, just finally having some things go Cincinnati's way, go the way of a team that I'm a fan of. It is good to watch for a change.
It really is. And you're right. Definitely thinking about Luke Weaver and the way that he kind of blew up in the first, you can't turn this team off early. If you do, you're going to miss it. And I mean that for anyone. If you're a fan of any team, I kind of envy baseball fans that watch Reds games with a bit of an unbiased attitude toward it, because it's just good baseball. It's just good fun. Now, if you're a fan of pitching, probably not. But if you're a fan of just dramatic baseball games, the Cincinnati Reds have your back. And for those of us that love the Reds and breathe, sleep, eat Reds every single day, yes, we might need pacemakers at the end of all of this, but we are really enjoying this. Let's talk about the heroes from tonight's game, because good night, there were so many. We got to start first and foremost with my dude, Will Benson. He was a homer shy of the cycle, Steve. We always had another cycle. His performance was so fantastic, and the biggest hit of the night came against the lefty. He's a lefty, Steve. Can lefties hit lefties? I didn't think that could happen.
Well, I'm sure David Bell's sending a strongly worded memo to somebody right now because that's just not supposed to happen. But no, Will Benson is doing the things continually that we've been talking about the last several weeks. He has really removed any doubt in my mind that I had about him remaining on the team. He's no longer on the list of guys that could potentially be sent down. He's no longer on the list of guys I worry about when I see their name in the lineup. I look forward to watching him play. And how about the energy and the excitement and the emotion when he slid into third base on that triple? There wasn't a guy more fired up in that stadium than Will Benson.
I love that about him. I think that might be my favorite part. I mean, obviously going back to his walk-off home run against the Dodgers and how pumped up he was there and just how he plays this game. He plays this game with so much heart and so much passion. Like, you can't help but be be drawn to watching Will Benson play. But not to be outdone, Captain Chaos, TJ Friedl, at a leadoff spot. Absolutely brilliant performance. He had 3 hits. He had a home run. The home run was really the cherry on top for what the Reds did in the 10th inning against Keegan Aiken for the Baltimore Orioles, the left-handed relief pitcher. Again, TJ Friedl, lefty hitter, lefty relief pitcher. Didn't matter. Killed the ball. But also he had 2 steals on the night. And just the way that he is able to affect the game in all aspects. I saw a fun tweet earlier from Carlos Guevara. He was talking about TJ Friedl. He said the person who's probably most disappointed about TJ Friedl's home run is TJ Friedl, because dude loves to be on the field and on the bases and just causing problems, as he was doing all night long.
Oh, he was really exciting to watch tonight as well. And I think, if I remember correctly, he's homered in consecutive games now, didn't he? Homered
back
the
to back
night
games,
as well. So he's showing a little bit of power. He's doing it against left-handed pitching. I think that we've reached the point where it's safe to say he is the everyday center fielder, and let's not worry about platoons as much with him. Now, granted, there are times you're going to want to get a righty in there, especially if it's a particularly nasty left-handed pitcher starting a game. But I think Friedl has shown us that he's unafraid. I keep going back to that thing Joey Votto said when he came back from the injured list, is that these guys don't care. They're not impressed. They're not afraid, and they're coming for you. And that really, if ever there was a t-shirt that needed to be made, that's the t-shirt. I think that is the motto of the 2023 Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this team, regardless of the fact that it's made up of super young players with very little major league experience, they act as though they are the grizzled vets. They are the team that's seen it all and nothing phases them. And I love that about this team. But even looking at the rest of the lineup, like, this was a night, if you took the over, you were pretty happy, because I think they hit the over in like the 2nd inning. But besides that, like, Elly, Jake Fraley, Tyler Stephenson all had 2-hit nights. It was good to see Tyler Stephenson having a multi-hit game. He was, blasting line drives into right field. Very nice to see. But it was interesting to me because, talking about the over, I got a great stat from a listener on Twitter. Shout out to Rob Rusk, who said the Reds, since Matt McClain has been called up, are 26-14 with the over since Matt McClain has been called up. So, take the over whenever it comes to the Cincinnati Reds run total with their team. And also, Steve, I'm sorry, one more stat too that I got to get in on this, because if you doubt Elly De La Cruz, if you don't think he's worth the hype, then I got one for you. Since 1901, the list of players to have a 300 batting average or better, 9+ stolen bases, and 10+ extra base hits in their first 20 games of their career, drumroll please, Elly De La Cruz. That's the list. No Mike Trout, no Shohei Ohtani, no anyone. Elly De La Cruz is the only guy to do that. 300 batting average or better, 9+ steals, 10+ extra base hits in his first 20 career games. Elly is amazing.
Besides all of that hype, and yes, I'm hyped. I'm with you. Besides all of that, throw all that out the window. Throw all of that press, all of that. Just get rid of that. Elly had a 2-hit game. Everybody's been saying, oh, they're going to have to send him down. Oh, he hasn't done anything since he hit for the cycle. Baltimore fans chanting overrated. Get out of here with that stuff. 2-hit game. Elly De La Cruz is just fine. It was great to see him get going. It's great to see him on the bases. You saw, I love watching the wide angle shots that they show when Elly De La Cruz has a hit and they back way off. I think it's that behind home plate angle where you can kind of see what everybody on the field is doing. And you watch how defenses play so differently when Elly hits the ball and runs the bases. Outfielders that would normally try to throw out a lead runner, they just don't. They're throwing behind that lead runner just to settle down De La Cruz. That's game changing. That is going to allow a lot of extra runs to score. And it helped for runs to score in last night's game because he's so disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, they're chanting overrated for Elly De La Cruz. Maybe when the Orioles come to town, we chant overrated for Adley Rutschman because Elly was at second before that ball got there. So that's what I know. But also, not to be outdone, and I know that the Reds didn't score in the ninth, and this segment's getting a little bit long on us, but I got to shout out this crazy bunt single that Nick Senzel had, that even the pitch right before it from the closer Felix Bautista for the Orioles, who's throwing 101 miles an hour. Nick Senzel tries to lay down a bunt, tries to get Elly De La Cruz to third, and he just fouls it off just awfully. And Chris Welsh is in the booth saying he's just like, that was all Nick Senzel. That's not anything called by any coaches or anything like that. That's all him. And then the very next pitch with 2 strikes, still tries to bunt, still a 101 mile an hour fastball. He pops it up. That it should be an easy like can of corn for somebody, but he finds the absolute brilliant space right in between the pitcher, the shortstop, and the third baseman for an infield single because they're so afraid to throw to first base. They think Elly is going to run home, which he probably would have. So I just love the strategy of that and the gambling. I guess it wasn't much strategy, but it was a huge gamble there, and it paid off.
And listen, in case you didn't see it, Bautista was throwing the ball 103 miles an hour.
Yeah.
For Nick Senzel to square around on that
movement,
that is some intestinal fortitude. That is some serious
crab cakes, as John said on the call.
Man,
yeah.
Yes. That was something else. Listen, one thing's for sure. You can never count the Cincinnati Reds out of a game this year. One of the biggest reasons the Reds are comeback kids is because of Luke Weaver. Yeah, follow that logic. Can the Reds continue to run him out there every 5th day? We're going to answer that question coming up next. But before we get to that, I want to take a minute and tell you about the sponsor of today's podcast, and that's Game Time. You can snag tickets at the last minute without the stress using Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, Jeff, I know you're looking to get those Taylor Swift tickets. I just looked. There's a couple for the low price of $1,600 on Game Time. So if you create your account, you're going to get that for $1,580, my friend, with $20 off using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Terms apply. Again, just create your account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase on Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
You can get $20 off $1,600. My goodness.
The Reds are off today, but will return home for a 3-game home series with the San Diego Padres. This is going to be the final home series before the All-Star break, starting tomorrow against the Padres. Once again, if you can't be down at the ballpark, you can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Reds your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are going to do a live show on Thursday's off day. That is today, 4 p.m. 4 p.m. today, live, in addition to a lot of other stuff that's going to be in your podcasting feed. So, don't trip out. We're not double posting. We got a lot of stuff coming your way today. So make sure you join us. Make sure you click that subscribe and notification on YouTube. Join us live. We want to take your questions and comments on this team as we look for what trades the Reds could make this season to fortify Well, the rotation, let's just call it what it is. And speaking of the rotation, Luke Weaver has got to go, right, Jeff? They cannot continue to run him out there. Now, look, I understand that they're shorthanded for starting pitchers, but at this point, I have to believe that anybody that they could call up from AAA right now would be as good or better than what Luke Weaver's given him. And I know, don't come at me with what he did in the second and the third innings and all that stuff. You cannot continue to put your team down 4 and 5 runs in the first inning of every start. You cannot continue to throw 40 plus pitches in the first inning of every start with this bullpen that is already tired and expect to continue to win.
Yeah, no, that's like setting your house on fire, but then mowing the grass afterward and saying, look at my yard. No,
you've done that, right?
No, I haven't done the first part yet. I've mowed the yard though. But yeah, I mean, he gave up 4 runs and he threw 40 pitches in the bottom of the first inning after the Reds had jumped up 3-0. Like after the Reds took the lead in the top half of that inning against Kyle Gibson, who is a solid veteran dude. I thought, okay, cool. The Reds can build on this lead. This can be a nice, easy win. They can take it easy on the bullpen. No, because Luke Weaver does what Luke Weaver does. I mean, look, this is not something that is an aberration here. He has 12 starts. I'll start by saying this. 12 starts on the season. Or no, actually, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Baseball Reference. I was 12 before today. He has 13 starts now. Do you know how many starts he has where he's allowed 3 runs or less?
Out of 13, 3 runs or less, 2.
4. So a little bit better than that, but still 4. 9 starts have been 4 runs or more. In those 13 starts, how many has he pitched at least 6 innings in?
1.
It's 3. Man, you're making me look like I'm an optimist for Luke Weaver here.
Well, you are, sir. That is your brand.
Not for Luke Weaver, for the Reds.
Hashtag Jeff loves Luke. That's what we're going with, folks. Let's see it in your comments on Twitter. Hashtag Jeff loves Luke.
Rather do that than the one you tried to make up about me with Jonathan India. No, the point is, in 13 starts, Luke Weaver has done very, very little to prove that he needs to be continued to run out there every 5th day. Listen, if the Reds can cut Will Myers and his $9 million or whatever it was he was going to make, they can cut Luke Weaver.
If they have to make a cut in order to get another starting pitcher up here, then yeah, by all means, cut Luke Weaver. However, what I would like to see, given the current condition of the bullpen, is I'd like to see him in a few relief appearances. I would like to see what difference it makes where he can come out of the bullpen, focus on his best 2 pitches, and go 100% effort for 1 inning. I want to see what that looks like. But if it doesn't look better than what we've seen, then yeah, by all means, cut him, get him out of here. There are guys at AAA right now that, even though we haven't even seen them pitch yet at AAA, I think are better than Luke Weaver is right now.
Yeah, Connor Phillips, I believe. Maybe give him 1 start in AAA just to make sure that, because AA has the weird ball and AAA, they have the major league ball. So make sure that he can still throw with the new ball. But, even then, I still kind of would like to see him up for the next start that Luke Weaver is scheduled to have. Or Seattle designated for assignment Chris Flexen, which he was actually a pretty decent pitcher 2 years ago. Now, this year, not so good. 7.71 ERA and a 6.61 fielding independent pitching, which means he's not really getting that unlucky with his ERA in 74 innings.
He'll fit right in.
Yeah, he kind of is Luke Weaver at this point. But last year, in 137 innings, he had a 3.73 ERA. So he's done this before. He can do okay. And I'm not saying he's going to be the next ace. I'm saying he's going to be better than Luke Weaver, which, let's be honest, you could probably say that about a bunch of people, including Alec Mills, who was actually warming up in the bullpen last night. So I don't even know, is he going to be a starter for this team?
I have a thought on that. He is going to be a starter with the off day and how they've restructured the rotation for the Padres series. He'll still be able to make a start on regular rest if you count him warming up today as him having pitched. They're not going to need him for another 5 days. I don't know if you caught this, but the Reds have kind of shuffled things around because of the off day. In this Padres series, it is Graham Ashcraft followed by Brandon Williamson, and then Andrew Abbott's going to pitch the Sunday finale on regular rest because of the off day. So at least during this Padres series, the Padres are going to get the best of our train wreck of a rotation. I guess that's the nicest way I can put that.
Hey, if you get Andrew Abbott, you get our best for right now. But I think Gray Mashcraft's going to bounce back. I really do. Like, I do not think that this skid's going to continue, but I don't see Luke Weaver bouncing back in the rotation. I think I'm with you. I think the best case scenario is they're able to move him to the bullpen and then bring somebody else up. Look, he was a bullpen piece for the Royals. We've said this a million times. He was a bullpen piece for the Royals and for the Diamondbacks for the last couple of years, and then the Reds signed him to be a starting pitcher. Like, all of a sudden that was going to work. So I think that we know it's not going to work. It's not going to fix itself, so let's get somebody else in here if we're really serious about every fifth day. Like, unless someone handed him the script that says the Reds are going to lead the major leagues and comeback wins and you're going to be the reason why, then just let's call it what it is. He's not a good starting pitcher.
Yeah, I think it's the easiest point that it's been thus far for them to remove him from the rotation. He's coming off back-to-back starts where he's given up 4 or more runs. He's coming off back-to-back starts where, despite his best efforts to cost the team the games, they've rallied for him. But he's put all that extra pressure on this bullpen. With this off day, moving into the restructuring of the rotation for the San Diego start. Now, the aforementioned Alec Mills can go on Monday, and now we're 4 guys in. So that means Tuesday is really the next time you really are forced to deal with, are you going to let Luke Weaver start a game? It is my hope that by Tuesday, they've either gone out and got a guy via waiver, like you suggested here, or they're willing to bite the bullet and bring up either Connor Phillips, depending on what they do with him in Louisville on his rest cycle, or let's get Levi Stout back up here for that Tuesday start and let him make another start a little bit more stretched out, and then address the situation again when it comes around 5 days later. And by then, Connor Phillips should definitely be ready. So that's the way I would go with it.
I don't, and I think the lineup's going to shove in the series that they're going to have the trouble with the pitching. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. But if you're going to have this kind of a pitching question mark, at least you can have it against the Nationals and not against the Brewers, who are the series after that. That just probably means the Reds starting pitcher for July 4th of this season is going to be weird. That's what I know. But I know this. It's time to move on from Luke Weaver. But listen, somebody else who's been slumping here recently, Jonathan India, he's sparking many conversations about what his future looks like. Do you need to move him in the lineup? Do you need to move him to another team? Are we worried about this slump? We'll give you our answer coming up next.
Hashtag Jeff hates Jonathan India.
Yeah, there you go. You haven't done that in a while. Before we get into that, though, I want to let you know that the Reds are off today, but will return home for their final home series of the first half, in quotation marks, because technically they've already hit the first half mark, but right before the All-Star break, and they're going to start it against the Padres on Friday. If you can't be at the ballpark, if you want to avoid the craziness that will be at Paycor Stadium and, everybody trying to shake it off, then you can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search the word Reds. I'm betting 1,000 right now.
You're on a roll. You are. You're making me break up, crack, and all these things the last 2 days. I want to say this about downtown, because we've got a lot of faithful Reds listeners that are here with us every day. We see them at the ballpark all the time. I love talking baseball with them. Mm-hmm. I want to warn everybody what downtown Cincinnati is going to look like on Friday, guys. Not only are the Reds playing at 5:10, and they move that up to try and help a little bit, FC Cincinnati has a game. The Taylor Swift concert is sold out at Paycor, and they are estimating an additional 40,000 people are going to come downtown to be in the area of the banks to just try and hear some of the Taylor Swift concert. So if you're thinking you're going to come down to the banks and park and go to the stadium, you need to get down there at 8 a.m. to get a parking place. Carpool, park over in Kentucky and walk across, do whatever you can to make sure you don't miss the Reds game.
Who are we kidding? Leave in 5 minutes, and I think you'll be able to get there in about, it's going to be crazy. But I know this, Steve. It's interesting because here recently, and especially on Reds Twitter right now, there are a lot of wonderings going on. Does Jonathan India need to be moved in the lineup? Does Jonathan India need to be traded from the Reds? It's interesting to note because I was not necessarily sure as to how bad this really looked, but I went ahead and I looked at the numbers. Since Elly De La Cruz was called up 20 games ago, Jonathan India has a 208 batting average, a 296 on base percentage, and a 390 slugging percentage. That, my friends, is what you call a slump.
Yeah, it is. And it's time to move him down in the order. I'm just going to dive right into this, Jeff. I think the best thing for Jonathan India, and I know there's some are clamoring to put him back in the leadoff spot where he was doing well. I don't think that's the right answer either. I like TJ Friedl up there. I like the way that looks with Matt McLean batting second. I think that you move Jonathan India down in the lineup. And quite frankly, depending on the pitcher, I think you could stick Will Benson up there. Yeah. I think you could, depending on what days Joey Votto is playing in the pitching, you could scoot Elly De La Cruz up to 3, slot Joey back in at 4, his old stopping ground. There's lots of moves here, but the most important thing is, I think, to get Jonathan India down in this lineup, surround him by guys that are going to let him see good pitches, and then let him kind of break out of this thing. And then, of course, if he goes back to his hitting ways, you can move him back up. You can do things. But I think this is one of those situations where David Bell really needs to put him in the best situation to be successful, and thereby creating the best lineup possible to help this team be successful.
I agree. And I think that the biggest thing here to note is that the Reds need to move Jonathan India down in the order, not because of his slump, but because the team has so much talent in the lineup. Like, Will Benson was batting 9th last night when he hit, 1 homer shy of the cycle. And he has shown over a long period of time now, at least, it's still small sample sizes, according to like an entire baseball season, but a decent number of games now that he has shown he can hit the ball really well. So I'd like to see him move up. I've seen some folks say maybe Spencer Steer should bat 3rd. I think it would depend on the pitcher. I think maybe against right-handed pitchers, you slot Benson or Elly De La Cruz there in the 3 spot. Then you can have a right-hander bat 4th. You could have Spencer Steer bat 4th against right-handed pitching. So you go left, right, left, right, left, right. Or, against right-handed pitching, have Spencer Steer up there in the 3rd spot. There's so many different things that David Bell can do with this, but the point is he does need to do something. I don't think that letting Jonathan India figure this out while hitting 3rd makes a lot of sense. Like, maybe it made a lot of sense last August when there was no one to replace him with, but there are so many guys this year that are just hitting the cover off the ball, and we don't need to be having these weird lineups where you have guys who the last 2 weeks or last 3 weeks are hitting over 300, batting 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then you got Jonathan India and his 208 batting average, and in the last 20 games, batting 3rd.
Yeah, I don't like the staticness of what David Bell's been doing in regards to Jonathan India. I don't know if you listened to it yet or not, but Jim Day has a podcast out right now that has Jonathan India on it, talking about some of the mental stuff that goes on with playing baseball. And, he talked pretty openly about when all of the Reds have to trade Jonathan India talk was going on, and it really got to him. Like he said in that episode that he thought his days in Cincinnati were numbered. And I think that is part of what's been going on. That impact is there. I would not be shocked to learn somewhere along the way that he's pressing a little bit right now, because let's think about this. Matt McLean is killing it. He's in conversation for Rookie of the Year. Spencer Steer is killing it. He's in conversation for Rookie of the Year. Elly De La Cruz is killing it. He will be in conversation for Rookie of the Year. And if CES gets up here anytime soon, I bet that he's going to find his way into being in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. All of these guys are pressing India and pressing him because they all kind of need to play, and more than one of these guys plays India's spot. So I wouldn't be shocked to learn that there's an element of that to his slump right now. So I think move him down, get him comfortable, pat him on the back, give him a cookie, whatever you got to do to settle him down, let him know that he's a valuable piece to this lineup, and let's get him to start hitting again, because the Reds lineup is at its best when Jonathan India is firing on all cylinders.
100%. And there is a sign that things will turn around, and it's our favorite stat: batting average on balls in play. For the last 20 games, he has a low 214 BABIP. League average is like 290. So he's almost 80 points below league average. that's going to figure itself out. Like, he's going to get better. The slump's not going to last forever. We're going to see what we saw the first month and a half of the season, really the first 2 months there up until about the beginning of June. I mean, at one point he was batting 290. Like, this is not something that's going to stick around. I firmly believe that. I'm with you. Move him around in the order. Don't necessarily think the Reds need to think about trading him or anything like that, which, by the way, again, don't know why the idea for any slumping player is let's trade him, because if he's slumping, that's going to be the first thing that the opposing general manager says.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Or you're not going to get anything for him but a bucket of balls, and then he's going to rebound, and it's going to be very, very bad. So probably, Jeff, that's a good spot to wrap it up, because we're going to be back in everybody's feeds in just a few hours. So that before we get out of here, don't forget that you can catch every pitch of the Reds hometown broadcast beginning tomorrow night with the opener of this Padres series on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just download the app and search the word Reds.
That will wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks as always for making us your first listen every day. Everydayers, like Steve said, we're going to be back. We got a live show today at 4 p.m. where we will take your questions and your comments on the Reds as we look at what trades the Reds could make this season, in season, before the trade deadline. Also, crossover coming. We're going to get an Orioles perspective, because there was an interesting tweet from Connor Newcomb, our Locked On Orioles host, that last night during the game, he said the 2022 Orioles and the 2023 Reds are so similar that it's crazy, and we're going to discuss why. But before all of that happens, what can people expect from you and me, Steve?
They can expect us to continue to monitor the transactions and the rumors and the waiver wires, and looking for anybody high and low that can replace Luke Weaver in the rotation. And when we find him, we'll bring all that information back right here and keep everyone locked on Reds every single day. I can't wait to see your Twitter feed tomorrow with all these hashtags.
Shake it off. Shake it off.